Good morning, everyone. Todd Giles here. I'll be your instructor for FINA 180. Greetings. I want to do a short little video here discussing the course. One, I really love this course because it does give you an introduction to listening to music a little bit differently and more critically, looking at art differently and more critically. One of the most important things to get out of this course is understanding the elements of art and the elements of music. Just for instance, if I just look at a painting that's in a museum or on a wall in my office and just say, oh, it's pretty, or I hate it, but that's really not looking at the piece of artwork. Or you can hear a song and you say, oh, I don't like that beat. I don't like that type of drum, or wow, that cello sounds awesome, but you don't know how to actually get in there and think about it and let it affect you more than just a passing, oh, it's pretty, or I don't like it. So this course is really an introduction to be able to go deeper and understand art and music through the elements. What do I mean by elements? Well, especially in art, line, texture, color, space, form. For music, some of them are timbre and beat, but it's really tearing it apart and looking at what makes up the music, what makes up the art. So if you can get those elements of art down, and in the textbook, Wald, in the second chapter, another thing to look at on the page is the IW resources. Lots of information. The one thing that I really like, I put this to the top of the page, is right here, the IW APA 6E guide. Download that, understand it, use it for writing your papers, and then there's some other links here of connecting to university resources. So I would highly recommend that you use this page. First thing we want to look at is the syllabus. One thing I want to point out is this is our textbook, which I've shown you before, and this is the correct way in APA formatting in your reference. The second line should be indented, and then down below you have the rubrics for all the various assignments. Make sure that you use the rubrics to complete your assignments because that's what I grade off of. Now let's take a look at Workshop 1. First off, please go in to this page, Technical Readiness 1.0, and do a technical readiness test. Make sure that you have your pop-up blocker disabled, and make sure that you're using Firefox or Chrome as your browser. Now, the reason we're doing this test is because of, as you see here, McGraw-Hill Connect. This is the process that is being used so that you can listen to music. You'll also be quizzed on the music. If you don't do this test, there is a possibility that because of your browser or because you have pop-up blocker on, that you won't be able to listen to the music. And when that happens, you might feel very lost. So go ahead and do that now, here in the preview week, to make sure that you can actually use it. Another thing that I need to point out to you is underneath Reading 1.1. It's all of these links here at the bottom. These are videos that have been made by Dr. Frank Ponce, who is over the liberal arts electives area. And he has made these in order to allow students to understand a little bit better about the elements of music and of art. Or if you want to do it more by yourself, get onto YouTube, look at some of the resources that can be found there that are very good. So as we look at 1.2, talking about aesthetics, so that we get our mind connected to looking at the world, listening to the world, and looking for beauty. I don't want to go in too far because that's part of the assignment, but it's all about interacting and seeing beauty in the creation. And then on 1.3 discussion, actually get into looking at the elements of art, looking at the elements of music. This is where you really start getting your mind wrapped around that art can be torn apart and discussed in these elements. And the same with music. Every piece of artwork that's ever been created can be described and discussed by looking at line, by looking at how color is used, by looking at how texture is used by the artist, how form is created and how the whole thing was put together, how much space was implied in a painting, and then the same thing with music. So this is going to be one of the primary things in my thought of beginning to understand music and art much better. This is, to me, the bedrock. Looking at art, listening to music in a much better way. Then in 1.4, we start looking at the periods of art and music. They go together pretty well. They are put together in certain ways due to the culture and the times that they were created in, very much placing them in that time period. And then in 1.4b, we'll be listening to the music. And then 1.5, you've got a quiz. And then in 1.6, we have a Dropbox assignment, which is a critique of a piece of music. Up above here, you can see that there's a music critique builder. This is a pretty adequate help. Download that. As you can see here, this is an evaluation sheet. Sort of fill in the blank, and it helps you build up the research that you need. This is not the critique. This is just a resource to help you create it. Then you come back here, write a paper, making sure that you're following this rubric step by step. I like to tell the students that you can do these critiques one bite at a time. If you think of this whole thing and I have to do all of these various things, that can get you stuck in the mud real quick. However, if you just look at it as I just need to write down 1 or 2 sentences with good information, and then on and on and on, each one, piece by piece, putting it together into this paper. And you'll see as we go through the course, this is going to be the model for all of these Dropbox assignments, these papers that we're doing critiquing either art or music. And then near the end of workshop 1, there are 2 assignments that introduce major assignments for later in the whole course. We have a narrated presentation, PowerPoint, that is due in week 4 about a composer or a fine artist, and we have a list to pick from. And in week 5, we have a museum or a concert visit that you'll be writing about and critiquing a piece of artwork. So here in 1.7, there are 2 rubrics to take a look at, to download, that are about a concert and about a museum. Take a look at those so you know what you'll be asked to do. But here in the discussion portion of 1.7, we want you to be thinking about selecting what museum you want to go to, and it needs to be an art museum. It's not a science museum, it's not a cultural museum, it's not a history museum. It needs to be an art museum. In Indianapolis, the Indianapolis Museum of Art or the Cleveland Museum of Art. There are many within the Midwest region. Some of you might be outside the Midwest. I'll be sending an email later with a link to a website that has a listing of major art museums in the United States. And then in 1.8 is the introduction to the presentation about an artist or a composer. Here's a list of composers and artists. The number 1 rule here is that we not have any doubling up of students selecting the same artist. So you only pick one, but we can't have more than 1 student picking the same one. There is more than enough for this class size. And another thing that's very important here about the PowerPoint is it needs to be narrated and it needs to be auto-advancing. Number 4, number 5 here. If you don't know how to do that already, is go to YouTube. Of course, you can use Keynote if you're a Mac user. So that pretty much gets us in line of what we're doing on workshop 1. I'm not going to do a video like this every week. I'm just running through this first workshop to make sure that you're understanding the flow of it. This is pretty standard for each workshop, so I just want you to get acclimated to it. And as we go on from here, please contact me if you have any questions. If you're not understanding the elements of art, let me know. It's very important that you actually are understanding these concepts from week one. One other point before I go is make sure that you're actually looking at my comments in your papers. Put those suggestions and comments into your next paper to make that even better. Before I go, just a reminder, contact me if you need any help. Email is the best way to get a hold of me, or in the faculty forum, and I hope that this is helpful. I will talk to you later. Have a great workshop.